Chapter 8 Into the Unknown. Island Trading Post, head of the Susquehanna River, northern Chesapeake Bay, Maryland Colony. An early morning in late spring, 1729. The William that left Pennsylvania in a ghillie, trousers, and leather shoes now stands alone, clad in buckskins, knee-high moccasins, and a wide, flat-brimmed hat, with hair well past his shoulders. With one hand leaning on the hitching post and Martha's barrel in the other, he watches his Irish brethren fade into the distance. Strangely, however, the longer he watches, the more he finds himself focusing on their horses. Subconsciously he sighs, "A horse sure would be nice." Just then, a coonskin cap pops up from behind the horse next to him on the rail, and a strangely accented voice utters, "Un cheval?" William watches the coonskin step from behind the horse. Standing before him now is a small-statured old Frenchman, a trapper who, like him, just arrived from the wilderness. Eye to eye with the top of the Frenchman's cap, William shifts his gaze downward and looks him in the eyes, asking, "Were you talking to me?" Just then, the back of another head pops up behind the next horse on the rail, the movement catching William's attention. To his surprise, it is a cleanly shaven, sun-bronzed head, with a single outcropping of long, sultry black hair springing up towards the back, the base of which is ornately weaved with colorful beads and feathers. But beyond his uniquely decorated noggin, William can see no more of him. Peering over the Frenchman's head, he watches as the man steps from behind his horse. William is impressed, for standing before him is a muscular bronze statue with dark, confident eyes. He is clearly a native warrior, but from what tribe, William has not a clue, for this is his first encounter with the indigenous people he has heard so much about. The man is cloaked in a sort of buckskin-sleeved smock stretching to his mid-thigh, with leather leggings wrapped about his thighs down to his moccasin boots. This being his first encounter with a native, William takes in the man's extraordinary display. With the old Frenchman still standing between them, the warrior says, "Him think you need horse." Snapping from his daze, William blurts, "Oh, I guess I do be needing a horse. Have you any idea where I can find one?" From below, the Frenchman blurts, "Oui." When William looks down at him, the tiny Frenchman steps to the first horse on the rail, untying its reins. Backing the beautiful creature away from the rail, he hands William the reins, patting the horse twice before stepping away. "Him say, him have this one," the warrior says. "So, why are you selling him?" In a measured tone, the warrior answers for his French partner. "His horse of partner. Him perish." Closely examining the horse, William asks, "Your partner, did he perish in the wilderness?" "Bear attack. Him no longer need horse." "Yeah, I guess he wouldn't. Death by bear. That seems to happen a lot out here." Nodding, the native replies, "Yes, much ugly." "I imagine it would be. Only him with great spirit survive Magua." Chuckling, William says, "Tell me, friend, does that include the Holy Spirit?" The warrior points skyward. "Only him know." While inspecting the horse, William considers his words, nodding as he pats down the horse. The American quarter horse yearling is striking, muscular, and healthy looking. As William looks it over, he senses a hint of desperation from the old Frenchman. Trusting his gut, he steps away, showing little interest in the horse. Then, with a slap of his hands to his sides, he shakes his head, turns, and walks away. The trapper and his native companion are flabbergasted. Stone-faced, they exchange a glance as he walks away. Desperate, the Frenchman says something to his friend, and he shouts, "Wait!" William stops and slowly turns to them. Waving, the warrior says, "Come, We talk. With a display of reluctance, William walks back over. Striking while the iron is hot, the warrior interprets for the Frenchman, negotiating a deal for half what the horse is worth, and William accepts. As the old Frenchman and his majestic-looking partner walk away, William turns to his new yearling. Standing before him is a beautiful seal-brown gelding with brown eyes and a sultry black tail, mane, and socks. Although he has no saddle, the striking mount came with reins and an Indian blanket for his back. Eager to continue his adventure, William loads his meager supplies and mounts up. Stroking the horse's chin groove, William says, "All right, boy, you ready for an adventure?" Bedroll across his back and Martha over his lap, he gives the horse a nudge with his heels and they head south, leaving the island trading post in their rear view. Now on horseback, he covers the 14-mile trek to the eastern shores of the Bush River in just 4 hours. Before them, the port city of Old Baltimore Town, or modern-day Abingdon, Maryland. Cantering along the muddy streets, William has no way of knowing this town and all that he sees will soon cease to exist. For the Bush River is so badly silted, it is nearly impassable for ships and therefore dysfunctional as a port. Hence, later that summer, on July 30th, 1729, the city and port of Baltimore relocate, moving to the mouth of the Patapsco River some 25 miles southwest as the crow flies, leaving old Baltimore town to fade into obscurity. Baltimore and the surrounding area have been inhabited by Paleo-Indians since the 10th millennium BC and continued to be populated by various other tribes well into the 1600s. In the lower Susquehanna River Valley, the Susquehannocks controlled the upper branches of the Chesapeake Bay, and to avoid the Powhatan tribe in the Potomac region, their tribal hunting grounds spanned the frontier north of Baltimore County. Due to tensions with the Susquehannocks, and as illustrated on Captain Smith's map of 1608, the region west of Baltimore is occupied by the Piscataway tribe of Algonquins. Their people living and thriving along the northern banks of the Potomac around modern-day Charles and Prince George's counties. Captain John Smith led the first European expedition to the uppermost Chesapeake Bay in 1608, sailing more than 200 miles from Jamestown to the Patapsco River. It would be another 25 years before English colonists began settling in Maryland. And although a peaceful tribe, the Piscataway people initially terrified the early English settlers due to their unusual body paint and intimidating ceremonial dress. The colonists' fears eventually subsiding when a local Piscataway chief issues approval for Englishmen to settle in their territory, after which friendly relations are established. Old Baltimore Town, northern Chesapeake Bay, Maryland colony, early afternoon on a late spring day, 1729. After a quick stop to fill his belly, William mounts his steed and continues west, initially backtracking around the northern tip of the Bush River. From there, he continues south by southwest, traveling just north of the Gunpowder, Back, and Patapsco rivers, through what will soon become the new city of Baltimore. Riding comfortably atop his handsome mount, William thinks about how and why he and this beautiful creature's lives crossed paths. Grateful, he leans forward, stroking his neck. "Well, friend, if and we're going to be partners, you'll be needing a name. So, in honor of me recently departed brethren, Jonathan and Jeremiah, I'm going to call you JJ. What do you say, boy? You like it?" JJ bays and proudly tantivvies onward. 32 miles later, they are staring at the northern head of the Patapsco River. Shadows from the trees are already darkening the wilderness as the sun fades to the west. Seeing this is as good a place to call it a day as any, he finds a good spot, ties off JJ, and sets up camp. After fashioning a makeshift shelter, He feeds JJ and walks him down to the water for a drink. Resting by the fire now, he dines on a course of dried fish purchased in old Baltimore. As the glow of dusk cascades across the landscape, he gnaws on his dinner, taking in the view. Before him, the picturesque shores of the Patapsco, lined with trees, plush and green. The late sun's softness glistening off the water, casting the entire riverbank in a golden sheen. Soaking it in, he thinks about what the haggard old smithy told him in old Baltimore.
Well, the easiest route to Virginia is south by southwest along the Chesapeake Bay. Follow her for 35 or so miles down to Marlborough. From there, head due west until you hit Piscataway Creek. Now, if you follow it west, it'll lead you right down to the Potomac. From there, follow the river north, and before you know it, you'll be in Virginia, son.
William asked, "So, you've been there, have you?"
"Only once, young man, and I'll never go back."
"If you don't mind me asking, why is that?"
"One word. Injuns."
Although his words were not very encouraging, maps are few and far between, so all he can hope is the old smithy steered him in the right direction. So far, so good. But for now he is tired, and as the pale blue sky fades into a glimmering sea of stars, so too does William, his eyes slowly closing as he gazes with endless wonder. Northern head of the Patapsco River, Maryland Colony, an early morning in late spring, 1729. The proud screech of a red-tailed hawk soaring overhead jolts William from his slumber. Sitting upright, he wipes the sleep from his eyes just in time to witness a pair of fish jumping on the river. Taking in a deep breath, he glances to his right and sees JJ right where he left him. Not wanting to burn daylight, he gathers himself and walks down to the river to freshen up. After splashing some water on his face, he fills his cup and uses it to douse the embers from the previous night's fire. Then he packs his gear, mounts JJ, and heads out. For the next 2 days, he follows the old smithy's directions, the route taking him south through a landscape of tall green grasses, colorful wildflowers, hemlock, and northern pine. Along the way, they pass east of what will later become Fort Meade and west of what will later become the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis. As they emerge from the forest, William finds himself in uncharted territory. He has come into a clearing along the edge of a sprawling tobacco farm, in the middle of which are several dark-skinned people laboring in the fields. But these are not natives. They are darker brown or black. Riding along the edge of the field, he spies a white man on a horse in the distance. As he watches, he witnesses the man aggressively ride over and horsewhip one of the workers in the back of the head. Then it hits him. These people are not laborers. They are slaves. Dozens of them, adults and children of all ages. Uncomfortable to watch, William turns his head away and continues onward, riding along the edge of the field as fast as he is able in the opposite direction, putting as much distance as he can between him and what he witnessed. Until that moment, he had only heard about slavery. Shockingly, now he is witnessing it with his own eyes, and he does not like what he sees. Although tired and hungry, his gut screams for him to push on. He had originally hoped to find work in exchange for food and shelter there, but unable to fathom what he just witnessed, he thinks better of it. Fearing for his own well-being, he opts for getting as far away from there as he can, pushing JJ onward. With the tobacco farm behind him, he continues along an old cart path. A few hours later, he finds himself in a port city on the western branch of the Patuxent, passing just 10 miles east of modern-day Joint Base Andrews along the way. The sign at the edge of town reads, Marlborough Town, established 1695. Named in honor of the first Duke of Marlborough, General John Churchill, whom Captains Hunter and Wayne served under, Marlborough was originally part of several prestigious estates, which included Grove Landing, the Meadows, and Darnell's Chance, owned by the Brooke, Beale, and Darnell families respectively. In 1706, when the western branch of the Patuxent was still navigable, Marlborough Town was a thriving port town, essential to the tobacco farmers who dominated the local economy. As a result, the town grew agriculturally, socially, and politically. And in 1718, the county seat moves from Charlestown on the banks of the Patuxent to Marlborough Town, where it remains to this day. In 1744, Marlborough Town will be renamed Upper Marlborough. Later still, during an attack on our nation's capital during the War of 1812, the British Army will camp overnight in Upper Marlborough while en route to set the White House ablaze. The 35-mile trek to Marlborough Town is wearing on William's body and mind. With each slave-filled field he passes, the churning in his gut intensifies. With that alone driving him onward, he rides for several more hours, stopping only when the wrenching in his gut subsides and he is running out of daylight. The next morning, he changes course, heading west per the old smithy's directions. Several months departed from his family now, William finds himself alone with his thoughts. His mind drifts to Ireland and days gone by. Memories of family, friends, and the old farm play out in his mind. Then he sees it. The old farm and the burned-out shell that remained as he and his kin rode off for Dublin. Wiping those thoughts away, he focuses instead on the good times, like his mother's cooking, senior stories, and time spent laughing with family. Gazing at the beautiful scenery, he is entertained by the bounty of birds frolicking about. He reflects on the lessons he has learned during his time here in Maryland, and the ever-so-tempting opportunity to stay on as a partner with his Irish brethren and call the region home. But as beautiful as it is, he is in search of something more, and he is hoping Virginia will be that place. During his travels through Maryland, most of the people he encounters are of German descent, their spoken English profoundly influenced by that fact, which is to say, attempting a normal conversation is a struggle at best. He feels out of place here, maybe because of the language barrier, or maybe because something just did not feel right. Whatever the case, into the unknown he goes, following the old smithy's directions along a southwesterly route. So far, the old smithy's directions have been spot on. However, he intentionally failed to mention one very important thing. His directions are leading William and JJ into Indian territory. Slowly trotting through the plush green forest, something catches William's eye. The hunter in him brings JJ to a halt, and he quickly dismounts. Scanning the area with Martha in hand, he spots more movement through the trees in the distance. Since leaving the tobacco fields, all he has seen are squirrels, rabbits, and an occasional raccoon. This, he is hoping, will be an opportunity to dine on fresh venison. Uncertain of what he had seen, his guard is up, as are the hairs on the back of his neck and the accompanying tingling sensation about his crown. Cautiously, he slowly walks JJ forward. Scanning the area, he sees what had caught his eye moments before and quickly takes cover. Kneeling behind a cluster of eastern hemlock, white pine, and shrubs, he holds JJ at the ready. Like the experienced hunter that he is, he silently watches as a group of natives emerge through the trees, slipping their way through the forest. William is fascinated by their dark, red-painted bodies and their faces painted in an assortment of colors, while some, on the other hand, he finds to be truly fearsome, the whole of their faces painted with dark blue above their noses and red below, their appearance magnificent and intimidating. While some of them are older, William notes that none have beards. Rather, their chins are painted with lines of assorted colors from their lips to their ears. Their black hair rolled into a knot near their left ear and decorated with beads and hand-carved ornaments. Interestingly, some are wearing what appears to be the figure of a copper fish upon their foreheads, although from this distance he cannot be certain. They, like the warrior at the trading post, are clad in buckskins hanging behind them like capes, with what look like aprons around their midsection. The rest of their bodies, to William's shock, are stark naked, which is also true of their feet. Their only other adornment, the colorful beaded necklaces around their necks. Looking on through the cover of shrubs, he takes special note of the fact there are no women. From what he sees, the group consists of only men and a dozen or so boys, each of them armed with bows and 3-foot-long arrows tipped with a sharpened white rock or flint. William's stomach churns, fearful he stumbled upon a war party. Sweat rolls from his scalp and down his face and neck, and while his hands are steady, they are sweating from the late spring heat like the rest of his body. With astonishment, he watches as one of the men targets a flying sparrow. Following its flight, he releases his arrow, striking the bird mid-flight at a distance of about 20 feet, the bird and arrow falling to the ground to be quickly retrieved. William is impressed, the amazing shot convincing him of their reliance upon these weapons, for such precision can only be achieved through countless hours of practice. Oddly, despite their somewhat intimidating appearance and impressive archery skills, William does not see them as a threat, and after further observation, rather than a war party, he now believes they are merely a hunting party, for the more he watches, the more they remind him of his time with Jonathan and Jeremiah. As it is obvious, the older men are teaching their younger counterparts the fine art of gathering meat. In fact, their interactions give the impression of a humble, happy people, William's gut telling him they are more friend than foe. Before long, the last of their group makes their way through the trees and out of sight. William wipes the sweat from his brow, waiting until he feels it is safe to proceed. Although Jonathan and Jeremiah had warned him about Indians, to their surprise, they never once encountered any during their time together. They assumed this was due in part to the inclement weather. Nevertheless, all William knows about Indians is what they told him, and what they told him was Indians can be dangerous, so he had better be on guard, especially when traveling alone. Nevertheless, by his own account, these Indians appear contrary to what they told him. Still, he proceeds with caution. Albeit brief and from a distance, this is William's second encounter with Indians in less than a week, and he has little doubt it will be the last. After waiting a while, William mounts JJ and continues west. Shortly thereafter, he comes across Piscataway Creek, just as the old smithy foretold. After rewarding JJ with a cool drink, they travel southwest another 18 miles until they come upon the Potomac. Peering across the river, William sees what will later become Fort Washington, but for now it remains God's untouched landscape. As he nears the river, he is surprised to find the group of Indians from earlier. They are gathered by the water and appear to be setting up camp. He stops JJ and slowly dismounts, holding his steed at the ready. Eyeballing their camp, he is surprised to see more than a dozen horses and several more tribe members than during his initial encounter. Coupling this with his previous observations and gut intuition, he decides to approach and make his presence known. As he comes closer, one of the young boys spots him. Shouting, he alerts the group to William's presence. It is then that one of the men, a tall, bold, strong-looking fellow, steps forward. He is dressed similar to the man he met at the trading post, but different. Unlike his tribesmen, he boasts a full head of long, sultry black hair hanging well past his shoulders, his eyes dark but friendly. The noble-looking fellow silently observes William as he draws nearer, his posture and expression confident and fearless, and thankfully for William, completely unaggressive. In fact, his body language mirrors that of his own, which is to say, curiously optimistic. So he continues his approach. As William draws cautiously nearer, to his shock and surprise, the man addresses him, shouting in English, "Welcome!" This stops William dead in his tracks. Although he had no idea what to expect, being greeted in English was not on the list. Smiling, William cautiously waves. "Hello!" The man reciprocates. "Hello!" Patting himself on the chest, the man says, "Me, Chief Tatooine Tayak of the Piscataway, descendant of Chichomichan Tayak." Thinking quickly, William pats his own chest and replies, "Me, William Bruce Albin, descendant of the McAlpin clan, and this is me horse, JJ. We have come from afar to travel through your beautiful valley on our way to Virginia." The man listens intently, then to William's surprise, turns, extending his hands across the Potomac, proclaiming, "Virginia, there!" Then turning back to William, he stretches his arms wide and states, "And Piscataway, here." Then facing to the north, he repeats the gesture, adding, "And Piscataway, there." The Piscataway are a woodland tribe of nomadic hunters and gatherers who have inhabited Maryland for more than 10,000 years. For more than 1,500 years, they have cultivated the land, growing squash, beans, corn, and tobacco. Even then, William's encounter with the tribe is a rare occurrence, for most of the Piscataway had been pushed out of Maryland by the beginning of the 18th century, many of them killed in various conflicts or victims of European diseases like smallpox. As William listens, it occurs to him Virginia is staring back at him from across the river. Coming to his senses, he replies, "And it is most beautiful." The man pauses, silently staring at him. Then, with a warm smile, he waves for William to join him. "Come, William. Come with. Sit. We talk." That very moment, William's tensions begin melting away. Cautiously, he walks over to the man. To his surprise, he is greeted with a warm, two-handed shake of his right hand, followed by a pat on his back. "Come, we sit." While the rest of his people go about their work, the chief leads William over to some large boulders, upon which they can sit and talk. William ties JJ off to a fallen tree and joins the chief on the rocks. Just as William predicted, Tatooine explains that he and his people are away from their village to hunt. They need to build up their meat stores for the coming cold. "And we have brought our young warriors to teach them our ways." He goes on to explain, "After a long day of hunt, we come to river to prepare meat and hides for a long journey home." As William looks around, everyone in camp is hard at work. Meat from the large game is being skillfully butchered, defatted, sliced into strips, and pounded flat, after which it is hung and slow smoked, preserving it just as he and his Irish friends had done. "Meat ready by morning. Now we gather crab and fish. Tonight we feast, celebrate success of hunt." While Tatooine speaks, William finds his eyes peering across the Potomac into Virginia. The river is wide, and he wonders how he will get across. Strangely, as important as Virginia is, he no longer finds himself in a hurry, for now he is intrigued with this Tatooine character and his people. He wants to learn more, and with any luck, they will help him cross the mighty river. "William, you stay, eat, talk more." William graciously accepts. "Thank you, Chief. I'd be honored." The rest of their day is spent talking and fishing. As a result, a day that started with tension transitioned into one of learning, enlightenment, enjoyment, and relaxation. Later that evening, The group sits along the rocky shores of the Potomac, feasting on corn, beans, squash, crab, and fish. Both parties being curious, their conversation continues throughout the feast and into the evening. With full bellies, they gather around a robust fire of fallen timbers and driftwood, warming themselves under the starry heavens. With faces all aglow, William gazes around the fire at the group of strangers encircling him. As the blazing logs crackle and pop, Tatooine shares how the very ground upon which they are sitting, at the mouth of Piscataway Creek, had at one time been the site of their village. The Kanoi Indians, also known as the Piscataway tribe of Maryland, are an Algonquin tribe believed to be ancestrally related to the Delawares. However, the Nanticoke people are the tribe with whom they are most closely related, having once formed a single tribe during the late prehistoric era. Their language, Algonquin, is closely related to that spoken by the Powhatan and Shawnee tribes of Virginia. While complex, Tatooine does his best to share an ancient story passed down through generations.
Long ago, come king from east, him rule over all Indian peoples inhabiting this province. And for many generation, our tribal king descended from him blood, him brother, son, or son of sister.
Well into the night, William and Tatooine's people sit listening as the chief weaves tales of his people, their traditions, and their history. He also tells of their many encounters with the white man, commenting,
"Some no good."
In that awkward moment, William's eyes shift back and forth around the fire, where heads are nodding in agreement. Then, with a big smile and a wave, Tatooine adds,
"But some, like William, much good."
With the momentary tension broken, Tatooine's faithful band of warriors break into a hearty laugh, nodding, smiling, and pointing at William playfully. Clearly, the joke is on him. Smiling, William nods and waves. "Thank you, great chief. I shall do me best to live up to that." As he finishes speaking, William whacks a pesky mosquito on his arm, squashing it to a pulp. Being so close to the water's edge, William has spent the better part of the evening fighting them off. As he wipes the mush from his hand, he notes the bothersome pests are having little or no effect on his friends. Seeing William's frustration, a warrior across the fire starts laughing at his disposition. Then he says something in his native tongue, pointing to the painted skin on his arms. Tatooine says,
"Him say, you need protect skin."
Then it dawns on him why the Piscataway paint their skin. While their appearance is important, it is really about keeping Mother Nature at bay. Looking through the flames at the warrior, William gives him a thumbs up and nods with a smile. With a broad wave of his arm over the fire, Tatooine continues his story.
"Although we recognize God of heaven, we pay him no worship. Instead, we strive to appease the spirit, which we call Akre, that he will bring no harm upon us. Our worship instead is given to the corn and fire."
The storytelling continues late into the evening. Eventually, the flaming logs burn into embers, leaving only the moonlight reflecting off the Potomac. Under the celestial glow, Tatooine tells of how his people are related to the Delaware and Nanticoke tribes, explaining they had originally inhabited the Piscataway Creek area but were forced to move to the Potomac region due to constant attacks by the Susquehannocks, adding the Piscataway had previously lived in Maryland along the shores of the lower Potomac and Chesapeake Bay, and how they had moved to the wilderness for fear of the white man's government.
In 1697, 2 white men from Maryland Council visit our people. Them try convince chief to return, say, because white men value us as fishermen.
"What happened?" William inquires.
The chief say no. Then we move from Fauquier to Loudon and the islands of the Potomac River near Point of Rocks. To this day, we live in village there.
Where exactly? William asks. Pointing north, he says.
60 mile up river.
William nods. As the evening looms, William loses track of time as the enthusiastic chief proudly speaks of his warriors, their families, their village, their traditions, and their way of life. Until finally, as quickly as the stories had begun, Tatooine stops. Looking around, he lets out a yawn, proclaiming,
Today, good day. Now we sleep.
About that time, William notices that most of his new friends have already wandered off to bed down for the night. At that point, William and the remainder of his new friends choose to do the same. But before parting ways for the night, Tatooine walks over and places a hand on William's shoulder.
William, you stay. In morn, come with to village. Tomorrow, William tell Tatooine about him tribe.
William smiles and nods. I would be honored. Until the morning, my friend. With another pat on William's back, Tatooine smiles and walks away.